this one. Some
Yeah,
good
this
news. Committees from both states will soon vote on bills that would provide a variety of protections for Bitcoin mining operations and node runners. Lawmakers from the U.S. states of Mississippi and Missouri have introduced bills that seek to legally protect their citizens' rights to run a Bitcoin node and to mine Bitcoin. It shall be legal in the state of Mississippi to run a node or a series of nodes for the purpose of home digital asset mining at a private residence. It shall be legal in the state of Mississippi to operate a digital asset mining business in an area zoned for industrial use as well. So they're protecting not only industrial use, but also home use. So home miners, looking good. Neither the state nor a political subdivision thereof shall prohibit the running of a node or a series of nodes for the purpose of home digital asset mining at a private residence. No political subdivision shall place any specific limits on sound decibels generated from home digital asset mining that is more restrictive than other limits set for sound pollution enforced by the political subdivision. Neither the state nor a political subdivision thereof shall prohibit a digital asset mining business from operating in any area zoned for industrial use. Bills have been submitted to both House and Senate of the respective states, with Senator Josh Harkins and Representative Jody Steverson leading the movement within Mississippi. Representative Phil Cristofanelli of Missouri submitted its respective bill to the House. Both states' bills utilize language from the Satoshi Action Fund, which we went over this last year, by the way, guys, and I have a whole dedicated video on the Satoshi Action Fund. Very good coverage there. Amongst the explicit rights for nodes and mining, the bills have language prohibiting political subdivisions of the state creating requirements which are not in line with other data center requirements, and changing of the zoning of Bitcoin miners without proper notice. And this is very important because remember, in Washington, this was just happening, right? We saw in Washington, if you were mining crypto, they adjusted your rates and put extra requirements on there. Adjusted energy rates, put a state tax on them. And so all the crypto mines just had to move over to data centers. It's not like they're using any less energy. It's just like they changed how it's defined, right? Which is absolutely insane. This goes back to like what we're seeing here being proposed on the federal level with the Biden administration, right?
Yeah, just being discriminatory toward miners for no reason.
Right. I mean, par for the course, right? It started with the gamers, and now, which is ironic if you look at what's happened to Twitch, just in general. I think everybody can start to put two and two together here as to where a lot of this is coming from, right? Sound ordinances directed at mining facilities that are not in line with other sound ordinances within the community. Operating nodes or miners being considered the act of money transmitting. Just yesterday, a New Hampshire commission recommended that the State Department of Energy investigate how Bitcoin mining could be integrated into energy grids statewide. Now, this is a big deal too, because if you guys want to know what's going on in New Hampshire, just to give you guys an idea, that is where Library and Odyssey are based out of. And there's a strong libertarian movement in New Hampshire, like the Free State movement. That is actually tied to also Jeremy Kukofkin? I forgot his last name. I'll have to look it up on Twitter. But if you didn't know, he was running for something in New Hampshire. Now I forgot exactly if it was House or what, State Senate. But he is also runs Odyssey. So it's kind of interesting to see this also getting proposed in New Hampshire. It's pretty good news as far as that's concerned. Of course, New Hampshire is in a very odd location for what they're pushing here, right? So there's going to be a lot of outside influence because it's such a small state surrounded by a lot of other small states that have completely differing views, right?
Yeah.
A report released in November of 2022 directed at members of the Texas legislature recommended making Bitcoin an authorized investment for the state while giving tax incentives to local Bitcoin miners. We've talked about all that stuff with Texas as well in the past. Quote, I see an opportunity for states that were left out of the tech boom to have a real shot at taking part in the Bitcoin boom. Oh my gosh. You know why that's hilarious right now? Because what's happening in California right now?
Everyone.
The bank run.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's running the banks and moving out.
And then, so this is pretty funny because that was the tech boom was all Silicon Valley, right?
Yeah.
And as that's collapsing, we're moving into the next step. I really honestly see this as the next step of the digital revolution, right? Starting out kind of with the tech boom and everything happening in Silicon Valley. Now we're moving into AI, and cryptocurrency is really where the tech is moving. And because now we have all the technology from, the tech boom, people don't have to work in a highly densely populated area anymore. Like most of our work is not that style anymore. So you have to have different incentives for people. And I think with the tax burden that California puts on people, along with everything else, it's really kind of making it an unattractive space to be in, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's just going to cost you way too much to live there, and people are going to move, right? And if the incentives for cryptocurrency as well move to different states, and I think you're going to see the states that are accepting and putting in rights protections for mining and for custody, right, of cryptocurrency, I think you're going to start to see them prosper a lot more than you see the states that are going to try to restrict it.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think Texas has made some very smart moves as far as tech goes. A lot of companies are moving there, and they're already protective on Bitcoin, and they're gonna if they can put it into law, then I think we're gonna see some big. I mean, they're really smart. They're gonna be making a ton of money. And be very, very attractive.
And before anybody says like the federal government is going to change that, just look at how successful they were with marijuana, right? The government was not successful with marijuana on the federal level of going and prosecuting. There were some examples set, but eventually it just came to the point where they had to give up, right? Yeah. I see that happening with cryptocurrency, right? It just gets to the point to where they're going to set a few examples, and then it's going to be like, okay, like clearly, like people want this. We're not going to be able to do anything about it. And you might see mass exodus like you saw in like Denver, for example, where just a ton of people migrated there on the marijuana issue. I think you're going to see the same thing with cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
Just like mass moves to these particular states, right? And what's extremely interesting about this too is it's going to open up so many possibilities for flyover states to be brought into the digital revolution, right? Or digital transformation, right? And I refer to digital transformation as it pertains to the Sovereign Individual, the book. If you guys haven't read that, read that book, and then you'll kind of understand what I'm referring to. But as part of the digital transformation, like the step we're in now is transforming money to digital, right? And it doesn't. You could say Bitcoin's trash and Bitcoin's not going to ever happen and blah blah blah. Even then, still CBDCs are happening. A digital transformation of money is happening whether you like it or not. So keep your eyes open, because that's going to happen. It is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, people always say that. It's just like CBDCs are 100% going to be a thing, and it's like we don't need them, but they're gonna be there. So, whether it's just inevitable, because as long as governments exist, they're gonna control the money.
You're either going to figure out a way to capitalize on the digital transformation of finances, or you're going to get dragged kicking and screaming, right? That's pretty much, how it is. And you can yell all day at the top of your lungs that you won't, but as soon as your $7,000 tax refund, it goes through CBDC FedNow payment on your phone, you're going to give in. That it just is what it is, right? Like that's how that's going to play.
Yeah, they'll just push out the old system. I mean, it's the same thing with like checks and stuff. They just phase it out. It's like pretty soon places stop accepting checks, and so it's like You know,
It's just gone.
it's all digital. Yeah, they just force you into it. You know,
Right.
You can try as long as you want, but eventually,
I like
there's
how
gonna be
everybody
someone
like,
that doesn't accept it.
and then people still felt like they had control of their finances and the federal government didn't have eyes on it. Then COVID hits and they're just depositing money into your account. And it's like, oh no, they have full access to all of this already. Yeah. So all it is just an easier way to handle it and manipulate it, right?
Yeah.
That's it. So the reports also all signify growing interest from states across America on how they can benefit from adopting Bitcoin and utilizing Bitcoin mining within their energy networks. Continued political action from the likes of Bitcoin Policy Institute and Satoshi Action Fund greatly contribute to the education of lawmakers. Quote, now that these bills have been drafted and introduced, we must continue the education process for the elected leaders of the state of Mississippi, Porter said. In regards to concerns voiced by Bitcoiners about the consolidation of hash rate in North American jurisdictions, Porter said that, quote, consolidation of Bitcoin mining is a concern, but is much less of a concern than the consolidation of nodes. So, man, a political figure that understands how this works is, we must protect them. We must protect this house. Definitely put your support behind Porter because he understands that that it is much less of a concern than consolidation of nodes. And where do we see the major difference between like the two largest networks right now? What is the biggest difference that makes one more centralized than the other? That's where their nodes are centralized on, right? The nodes of Ethereum being centralized on AWS is a much larger concern.
Yeah.
And the fact that you have to have some sort of skin in the game to really participate within those nodes anymore. I know you can run a node still on Ethereum, but like really when we're talking about the nodes that are processing like the transactions, we're talking about having to have some skin in the game. So it's not the same as a Bitcoin node anymore, right? And that centralization has happened. And making that distinction and having people that are representing the public understand how this stuff functions is going to be very important. The nodes and users of Bitcoin network are the ones in control. The block size wars prove this. However, extreme consolidation of mining could become a risk. We at Satoshi Action strongly support the growth of hash rate outside the USA and North America. Here's a big thing though about it, and I think these bills touch on it, and I think it's extremely important, but protecting the home miners. And we need to start considering the fact that your electricity rate should not, like, there should be in these states an incentive for your electricity rate when mining Bitcoin, right? Because you can't compete mining Bitcoin against large companies that are, using a lot more power because they get better rates. So the way to really solve that is going to be figuring out ways to incentivize home miners, I think, at the end of the day. I think they're so important too.
Tax breaks. That's what they should be doing. Like they give you tax breaks with solar and stuff like that. They should give you tax breaks if you're mining Bitcoin.
Yeah.
That's what it should be. They give you like a, just a 20 or 30% break on your electricity bill or something.
Well,
or like a rebate.
Or as simple as saying like, because if you're in an industrial, if you have industrial rates, the more you use, the cheaper your power is. Yeah. That same concept should apply to residential rates.
Yeah.
It's simple as that.
Yeah, because if you're using 200 amps, you get that tax break, and then if you upgrade to another 200 amp panel, then maybe you get the next tax break from there, and there's like a cap on it or something. But yeah, it should absolutely be like that. It
should be the same. If you're going to give it to one, you should give it to the other, especially when it pertains to mining, right? Because at that point too, like it is a business, right? Let's be honest. It's a business. Sure, you're doing it out of your home, but there's other tax breaks that you can write off out of your home, right? Like if you have a home office, you write off that square footage on your taxes. It should so your space, like let's say you have 150 square foot shed that you're mining out of, that should be a tax write-off, right?
Yeah.
And then you should get to scale that power cost.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you should be able to write. I mean, I do write all that stuff off. So, because I do have a business. But yeah, I do. Yeah, if you have a shed, it's like that whole shed is a write-off because you bought it specifically to do nothing other than mine. So it's absolutely a write-off.
Well, and think about it on big brain level too. Like they want everybody to move to electric vehicles. What do electric vehicles do? They utilize more power. You pay more power. So if you say, okay, hey, look, here at the state level or the federal level, we really want to influence people to move to more, environmentally friendly vehicles, right?
Yeah.
To do that, we need to upgrade our renewable infrastructure. Okay. But to make sure that we're going to get there, we're going to incentivize the public to purchase electric vehicles by giving them a break on their energy costs if they use over a certain amount. Let's say a Tesla uses X amount of extra energy at your house. If you buy a Tesla and you charge it at your house and it brings it up past that level, then you get a break on your energy use, just like you would if you were, in a industrial zone.
Yeah.
Because then you're killing two birds with one stone, right? At that point.
And exactly. That's what they say they want. They want everyone to get the electric vehicles, but they don't really. They're not. Yeah. They contradict themselves so many times. What do you actually want? Or I don't know what's going on with. I mean, I know what's going on, but
Well, it shouldn't be incentivized on individual industries, right? So it shouldn't be EVs.
It should be across the board,
or Bitcoin mining or whatever it should be. You have to apply that across the board, right?
Yeah.
There's still something to be said though for Bitcoin mining in the first mile. Is it first mile, right? Of either wind farms, right, where it can't deliver all the way across. So to make sure that the state's actually still monetizing those, there should be incentives for building your farms within that first mile. Same with flare gas, so you're not burning off 20% into the atmosphere for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
But
I mean, it gives it another use, because it's like they would have you. What they would rather us not mine with flare gas and just get it burned in the atmosphere rather than getting burned and used for something. That is what a lot. And the thing is, a lot of mining operations already are forced to go to renewables because that's the cheapest power rate there is. That's the cheapest, where you get the cheapest electricity is from renewables.
And if you think about it logically on the flare gas subjects, it's even more ridiculous because if you are running it through a generator, it is significantly cleaner than just burning it off straight into the atmosphere.
Yeah, it is. You should actually get tax. You should actually get tax breaks for that. You shouldn't have to pay taxes on that at all because you're doing a service.
It's crazy.
And then you're getting something. So it's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
So it says here, just to wrap this up, if the bills are enacted, they could contribute to mounting interest from state governments, something that Peterson is seemingly leaning on. I think I agree. Quote, the most important concept for legislators to understand is that Bitcoin is not going away anytime soon, end quote, he said. Even if states don't get behind the industry, they need to have a working regulatory structure for it and ensure that businesses who operate in this state can do so long-term in their state. And what do you think about that statement? Because I mean, obviously we get the statements all the time, like Bitcoin's dead, Bitcoin's dying, it's not going anywhere, nobody wants it. But as that's said every single time, it appears to me that it just always comes back based on the same halving cycle. Like, we are not outside of the halving cycle at all right now. Even with this recent dump, with the 30% tax announcements and all these other restrictions they're putting on, plus all of the inflation issues. In fact, without inflation and everything else going on, I would have expected Bitcoin to be in this range regardless right now.
Yeah, exactly. I think that Bitcoin this is like a healthy pullback. I mean, we're still above the 200 daily moving average. We haven't broken out of the cycle at all yet. So, I mean, we're close. We're at the bottom of it, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I think that I don't think Bitcoin's going away, and I think that I think more people and like more like institutions are starting to realize that, right? Because the longer that Bitcoin exists and keeps, getting more and more attention every cycle, it gets more and more attention, that they're going to realize, hey, these laws need to be in place. And I mean, that's the same reason why the government hasn't said anything like classified what Bitcoin is or a lot of these things are, because they're just hoping it goes away, but it's not. So
yeah, I mean, that's a good point you bring up, because it did keep getting brushed under the rug. I remember back in like 2016 through the 2018 cycle, a lot of legislation was announced and then completely ignored, right? Like nothing happened, and they thought it was just going to go away. It's almost as if Satoshi planned these cycles so that the government couldn't figure out what was going on. Like, it's obviously, I don't think that's true, but it's kind of funny that it seems to work in that manner, right? It pumps up, but because it dumps down and like levels back out before the government's fast enough to actually do anything about it, they kind of forget about it, and then it just takes over again, and then they kind of forget about it again. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, because I mean, that's exactly what happened. Because across the board, like in all the industries, like even just like from people interested in investing to like institutions and companies like Visa and Master, they had all these big crypto stuff that they were planning on implementing, and they just put it all on pause. They're like, oh, all the interest is gone. We'll just not worry about it. And then when it pumps up again, everyone will jump on board again. I think people, maybe next cycle in 2025. We'll see, I don't know, maybe it'll be soon, 2024. We'll see people realize that Bitcoin's not going anywhere.
Well, I think what you'll see is a shift in necessity, right? Where like, because of everything else that's happening in the world, because of inflation and because of people needing to move more freely than they used to in the past, because of the digital transformation, it's just going to be ubiquitous at some point, right? And like, I realize like a lot of people are talking about like USDC right now in chat, just like to give you guys a couple ideas on my opinions on stable coins. They were a great demonstration of how cryptocurrency technology or blockchain technology can be utilized to prevent governments from interfering with individuals' economic worth, right? That's what we saw in Argentina and Venezuela. Venezuela, though, I mean, they used Digibyte, right? Back in the day, they didn't even use the stable coin. So the price or the success and failure of any particular stable coin, it doesn't mean anything to me. Because I think that the only thing that matters is one Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, we're not going to be talking about the US dollar 50 years from now, right? I just don't think, like, it's not even going to be something like
there'll
this
be
is moving
other,
too
yeah,
fast.
there'll be other, yeah. I think at that, like in 50 years from now, I think that the price will be pretty stable and we won't see like these big volatile movements where Bitcoin goes down 30% in a single day. It's going to be like 1 or 2%. Bitcoin will be like a stable coin. It's not going to do much.
Well, the reason it does that is because of the halving cycle. So, because I've said this before, what we're looking at, like, we're going to go through the halving cycle a couple more times, like big swings, and then once the newly minted Bitcoin comes to par with the amount of Bitcoin being paid in transaction fees, once it's 50-50, like let's say you pay 0.000 or per block, right? So let's say it's 0.1 Bitcoin per block in transaction fees and you're minting 0.1 Bitcoin. Once that's 50-50, then you just stabilize the price and it's done at that point, right? And I think that's something that and that's when I guess what people call like the macro cycle, when it breaks into that, right? So that's kind of what we're waiting for. I think we got quite a few more cycles before that becomes a thing, personally, but eventually that is what does happen. You're correct. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Crypto Mining Show. You can check out the full episode here or more crypto content down here. Also, I'd like you to check out my locals page at sonofatech.locals.com, where you can become a member for free or choose to be a $5 a month supporter that unlocks additional content.